Welcome to BS&BEER Canada, everybody. My name is Aaron Jones. I am a carpenter and a builder on Grand Manan Island in New Brunswick, Canada. And wrong way. I am over here somewhere, right there. And we
Oh,
have an amazing show for you this week, or this month, actually. We're talking about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, mock-ups. It solves so many issues. Uh, we were out of beer, so I had to substitute. So I am drinking a Canadian Club Invitations 15-year-old in combination with my well water. Anyways, over to you, Connor.
Everybody, my name is Connor Malloy. I'm a designer, builder, and educator in Toronto. I teach predominantly at George Brown College. We have an exciting carpentry program where we teach students about the best building practices for building really well. And it's exciting to be here. Tonight, I'm drinking, it's called Dear Toronto with Love from Vancouver. It's a West Coast style IPA. And yeah, let me turn it over to Lori.
hi folks. I nobody told me that my BS&BEER background wasn't on, and then I turned it on and it turned black. I have no idea what happened there. Uh, and I'm joining from Nova Scotia, so just over this shoulder. That's the easiest way I can do that. I'm like, which? Um, I am I co-own an architecture firm, and I am a passive house designer. I do a lot of projects that are uh, related to deep retrofits, and I just finished one that we're going to hear about in next month's show. So tune in for that. And I am really excited to hear this presentation about mock-ups because they're so important in high performance projects. So yeah, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeremiah.
Get myself unmuted. I'm Jeremiah Sommers. I'm a builder in Western Ontario. We kind of focus on a variety of things from new construction to retrofits, renovations, kind of whatever comes along. And mock-ups are a huge part of what we do because we do such a wide variety of project mediums. Having the ability to sort of walk through all that beforehand becomes really valuable. And I'm excited to share a little bit of that tonight. And I guess it's Finley's turn.
Hi everyone, my name is Finley Butler. I got my BS&BEER shirt tonight. I am located in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I'm the newest member of 475 High Performance Building Supply. And I'm located in Toronto, so anyone with any questions, let me know.
Beautiful. Thanks, Finley. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm gonna share a presentation. Maybe just tell me if you can see it once I actually click share. If you can, anyone see that yet? It's a slide
You've
deck.
got we got your entire screen right now, not just the presentation.
It's not my sundries I'm ordering, is it?
There
Okay,
you go.
how about now?
It's better. It's there you go.
So
Perfect.
if if I didn't mention, I taught almost 1,000 hours online during COVID, and yet I still have trouble sharing the right screen. So humble, right? Mock-ups. So tonight we're talking about really what is a mock-up, why we think as a group they're really effective things to build for communication. We're going to walk through then 5 different ways of sort of realizing a mock-up. There's different scales that we've been talking about as a community. So those are markups, maybe to drawings or to plans on site. It could be an actual material. So have your team, have they seen the tapes, the windows, the doors, even the sheathing, your client or designer has specified. Mockups, the thing we're actually here to talk about today. Maybe building a one-to-one mockup that Jeremiah is going to show us tonight is the right approach for you based on timeline budget. And then we're talking about different method, a bit newer, maybe build media. So Finley's going to walk through ways that he's been using video to learn and communicate his own projects as well. Kind of exciting. And the last one, kind of my inspiration is around this idea of like a Lego set. When you watch a kid, someone young, build something new for the first time, we're not giving them the full set of plans. We show them step by step and communicate clarity. and then we'll do some Q&A. This shot is how we teach at the college. We build lots of mock-ups to show, new professionals how to build. And I think we can take that same humility to all of our jobs and say, does each of our team members and tradespeople, do they understand the intent of these projects? So what's a mock-up? I asked my daughter today, and this is what she said. Well, I edited it, but this is the intent of what she said. It's easier to argue with plywood than with a client. The idea here is, yes, if we can work on these things off the books, off-site, and get our head around it, work through details, we can often be much more clear with our expectations and how to build these things. So when we think about, what is a mock-up as a group, we came together and saw, mock-up is really, it can be a full-scaled model. And it's here to really verify the design intent. You can check compatibility. You might be specified different materials from different manufacturers. Do they work together? What do they feel like going on? Do they work in my temperature, based on my climate zone? You can demonstrate for your team and for your trades the installation method. The manufacturer or designer might have specified something, but you as a company might have your own internal ways of installing windows or shimming things or for air and like doing your head flashing, right? How do we show others what that expectation is? And then the big one is really identifying sequencing issues. So shingling, positive lapping, even just how these things come together, right? This is how we build airtight buildings, and durable buildings is with intent. And it establishes a quality benchmark, right? This is what we want to replicate as a team, and it's fully on paper, or in this case, full scale. Why build it? I'm not going to read it to you and call out the highlights here. Is to be clear and establish clarity, right? What are we expecting as a group? How do we articulate what the steps are to realize this project? And a common understanding. Does every member of your team understand the control layers on every enclosure? Do they understand what the purpose of the zip sheathing and sealing all of those penetrations are? Do they understand why on certain windows we're not going to tape the bottom, but others we are, right? I don't think that's always a given, and we want to have common understanding. Confers detailing, right? What's acceptable? What does good look like? This crosses language barriers. It's now tactile, it's visceral, right? This can help. And it sets realistic expectations. So why is this necessary? Some of you tonight maybe are like, I got this. My team is totally cool. I'm going to show you some people that are not totally cool. This is a multi-million dollar house. Very expensive. It's a custom build. It's a one-off. Do buildings like this need mock-ups? I think they need something to communicate, because here's how this multi-million dollar is being assembled. Here's the base of the bay window. I'll ask you a question. These are all rhetorical. Is it clear to the trade, maybe the framer, maybe the cladding company doing blueskin, how to terminate at the base of the foundation? Was it clear under the window that there wasn't going to have enough tieback as it ever be to finish under the blueskin to the base of that bump out? Was it clear to the person doing windows that they needed head flashing on those windows? I don't know. That's what the window opening looks like. It was not repaired before clad. What about simple ones? Here's a simple massing. This is again, I'm showing you big numbers because it's not isolated to, small projects. This is again, these condos are $2.2 million, right? There's 6 of them in this building. This is in Toronto as well. Let's pull the cladding back. What do you think? I count 6 times of WRBs, one of which is backwards, maybe 7. We have a rain screen going 2 ways. One doesn't allow drainage and drying. Did they fix it before cladding? No, not really, right? So are these clear on expectation? It's not just about do they care, it's did they know, and was it clear, right? Was it clear? This is a small project. This is a laneway house. So maybe this is a sequencing issue. You've sequenced your insulation trade doing cladding before you've had your windows show up. We all get it. Things get delayed. How do you install head flashing on those windows now back to the WRB? It's very challenging. I call this one WRB by numbers. This might be my favorite at explaining this. Does the mason on this project understand that the WRB they're installing, this shingled, mechanically fastened house wrap, is the water control layer, right? Are they providing enough overlaps in here? Are they also bending the head flashing the windows? That's not an isolated case. Here's another one. These are big money projects in this city. There's another paint by numbers for the WB as they go across the building. Is it clear to that trade what are these different materials doing? Right? This is my own project. Even we need to spend time to communicate to our trades because this is what a corner of a building looks like. Where you've got a six-sided, unvented, hot roof meeting traditional wall framing, but being airtight. And this is what's in my head, right? This is what I want to look like after. How do I make it clear to my team how do we get that? All right. And what we've come up with is this acronym, right? This MAMBA, right? It's the, I don't know, the snake that can help you or kill you. I'm not sure which one it is. But either way, start a project, small project, and build a tool, whether that's a drawing, a physical one-on-one, but it's based on, yes, your team, what do they need to be successful? How do we support them? What budget do we have to spend either time-wise or money-wise to build this thing? And then the project scope. Each project scope is going to have a different mock-up that's required. And how we look at this is, M is for markup or drawings. Can we at least take the drawing set? A is actual materials. M is mock-up, favorite word, right? B is building media, reels, videos, images. And then A is assembly, right? Assembly sequence. How do we make this like a Kia document or like a Lego book, right? So we'll start with the easy, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Jeremiah. So markups. So I'm going to highlight some of Lori's work here. Maybe this starts as simply as you ask your designer or architect to take the drawing set, whether that's permit or issued for construction, right? Construction drawings. Can we at least identify where's the primary air control layer on the building? So it's very clear to this team that, you know what, when you come up the inside wall of that double stud, the air control layer now turns and now it's running horizontal across the bottom of the bottom corner of that truss. And Lori's done a nice little detail here where even that piece of tape in that inside corner, that right angle, is shown as a separate layer. You can see that, oh, that's folded, right? That affordance is really helpful. We can see that the water control layer goes up past those top plates up the face of the raised heel, right? Water control does not have to be continuous. And that kind of sponsors discussions on your projects. Maybe you go even further. You think, you know what? We've got 2 membranes, 5 tapes. Let's make each tape a color. We've tried this before too. We put a legend on the plans, so these details have callouts. The yellow is Stego. We try and make some connection to the affordance. Myrex is blue. The MyVest is a darker blue. Resan is a hot green, right? We're calling out these products so that when you look at this section, you can identify, okay, here's where this membrane stops. Our window has like a zero fold or something called blind taping on the window. We actually show that green layer stuck to the backside of the jamb, right? Doesn't have to be that fancy though. This all started with just drawing in a book, right? Drawing at the assembly, measuring with in this case with a measuring tape. Each square in the book was 2 inches. And we drew the assembly out, being very clear just to show the trades where are the overlaps, right? How does a head flash sit on this opening? This is an any window on a double stud wall, so it's not typical for this trade. And maybe how we teach to the school, this is quite effective too, is we just get a piece of trace, we pull it out, we draw out, in this case, the window opening and the door opening at full scale. Let's draw the foundation, let's draw the windowsill, let's show how the flash sits, let's show the overlaps. Just drawing at full scale sometimes helps you go, oh, right, that's how big that is, right? It really pulls that out of the drawings. The next one, this is probably obvious, totally get it, but sometimes it isn't. Actual materials, right? The drawings call for things. So using the actual elements, the product, the fastener, the material, the products are calling for, in this case, this is a Polish window. It's imported from Sokółka by Veta Windows and Doors, great window company. We had never seen this window on one of our sites before. We'd seen the drawings, but actually seeing the window, seeing how the weep can fit into our flashings we're going to build, actually measuring the bearing at the base of that window to figure out, okay, how's that strap anchor going to fit? How does shimming kind of work on that? Do we have room inside of the window to do blind taping? right? Showing the trades was very helpful. Mocking up just with a brad nailer what that slope subsail looked like. We worked out through this detail. We actually had to change our subsail sloping because we couldn't source deep um, deep lap siding that they can in Maine and upper Northeast United States. Doors. Maybe your trade hasn't seen the door before. Doors are hard, right? Windows are hard. Doors are harder. The sills are such a bugger to get, especially when you have a designer do this recess thing in the slab and then use a special kind of concrete board. And there's like 9 tapes in there. Like it's a great detail, but it's not simple right away. Actually having the door and look at bearing, look at the flash, just makes it again, you're trying to meet your colleague where they are, right? Start simple. Maybe it's as small as, hey, representative from my material manufacturer that I've been specified, can you send me a sample pack? Can you send me literature? Can you send me the tools I need to have my team use? Right? Maybe your team has never used a squeegee before. If you never felt Fendron before, you'd feel that it's actually like kind of fleecy, right? Now you get how it can take a parch coat. You get how sticky it is. You just get some of the working sense. And past there, what we found has really been effective is try and make it accessible. There was a time growing up that Tyvek was sounded funny to me. Blueskin, I didn't know what that was. People called acoustic caulking Black Death. Again, when I say these things, most of you go, okay, I know what that is. The first time you heard Wiglove, Fentrum, Contigo, Campego, did you know what they were? Could you go to the bin and get them all? I don't think so. So can we make it simple, just like interior designers do with sample boards? Can we raise the affordance? Can we make things tactile, right? If you have language barriers on your or understanding barriers on your site, can we make this a bit more organized, right? So this is the idea of like, how do you make actual materials physical on your job site just to raise that affordance level, right? But past there, best case is full-size mockups. And right now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jeremiah. So Jeremiah, maybe you can introduce kind of how and when you'd use a full-scale mockup, and then we'll play a bit of your video.
Let's see, where did I go? Oh, there we go. Okay, got there. Okay, so when it comes to a full-scale mock-up, it's probably not necessary in a lot of projects to do that. Sometimes it comes down to just how determined you are to try and pull it off and what kind of time you can afford to do that. But it also can be, find really valuable, and when you really want to get a sense of the actual material that you're using and um, be able to actually sort of touch and feel almost exactly what you're going to do on a job site, like basically like a practice build, kind of before things start to get expensive, and especially if you're trying something that you haven't used before or your team hasn't used before. A full-scale mock-up can be really valuable for that purpose. It also kind of allows you to integrate even things like tapes when you're cutting up small pieces of tape to try and replicate a fold or something like that on a small scale mock-up. It just doesn't have quite um, the same sort of hand feel when you want to actually get used to a new product. So full scale can be really good. It's really easy for people who are unfamiliar with the system that you're using to see it in full scale. Like it's right there in your face. You don't have to try. It's kind of like looking at a drawing for people who maybe aren't super comfortable trying to take a 2D drawing and make it 3D in their head. When you go full scale, you get to see a whole bunch of components on the mock-up, not just, a particular window detail, like on a corner of a window or something like that. With full scale, you can, go from foundation maybe all the way to, trusses or something like that. So it becomes really easy to visualize. And for me, the going through that process off-site is really valuable because it provides the opportunity to sort of, did I disappear there?
Yeah, you there you go.
You're
Kind
back.
of provides the opportunity to uh, even troubleshoot some little finicky details that like especially on foundations, like when we were doing ledges and things like that in a foundation, like, you only get one shot at that. And if you can do it on a mock-up, and usually I'll draw all of that out first so I can visualize that that's going to work, and then to build something, uh, it really is a good way to do that, because one thing with membranes and wood and things like that, you kind of have a little bit of room for error if it comes to that. But when it comes to something like concrete, there's really no turning back once that happens. So um, full scale can work really well that way.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think you're right. That an idea that building a quarter scale and folding a 2-inch tape or cutting in half to be 1 inch, it again it takes it out of what the real products look like on site once they get there, and you get your team to practice, right? It's your first time touching really sticky tape is a life-changing experience. And actually doing that before you're up on a ladder, 30 feet up with your gloves on is a great idea.
It also allows you to cover more parts of an assembly. So
Yeah.
you can actually bring, a foundation connection detail all the way to a windowsill detail, all the way to a transition to a ceiling air barrier or something like that. Where when you're doing smaller mock-ups, you really are restricted to that detail, which is perfect if really that's all that you're doing on that project. But a full scale can be really valuable for being able to sort of see it at a larger in a larger picture.
Yeah.
You can also truncate any part of a full-scale mock-up as long as you're doing that transition or that pinch point at the 1-to-1. So, well, one, you get the feel of the tape, whether you're 30 feet in the air or 8 feet in a pit, but you also actually get to find out if it's truly buildable.
Yeah.
Because we've all come across the detail that was like, okay, well, that's going to be challenging. And when you actually put it into real world practices, it's not fun. And then maybe it's not built. Maybe we need to adjust how we're gonna make this connection. So yeah,
Yeah.
mock-ups, huge fan. I think we all know that though.
And like I'm assuming a lot of people probably in the same kind of position we are. We rarely work with architects. Usually we're working with draftspeople, and our plan sets are almost always about 6, maybe 8 pages, and there is definitely not a window detail ever on a set of plans. We've never actually had, well, maybe once, but certainly it didn't show anything like Lori's detail. But really, we don't see or get any of those connection details on our plan sets. And so it all lands on us to try and figure out how all that's going to go. So, we can draw the sections all we want, but sometimes you just actually have to get the real material out and try it just to make sure that you actually know what you're looking at.
Yeah, I think that kind of picks up on Peter's question, which is, isn't it incumbent on the architect to provide sufficient quality of detailed drawings describing all techniques, materials? The answer is, I think they very well can. But I'd preface, does the client know when they hired them and signed the scope of work and paid for it, that there's a difference between a permit set of drawings, which is showing the code examiner you're building a legal safe structure, and the difference between issued for construction drawings, which are, again, like a Lego set, right? And I don't think everyone knows the difference, right? When you're making that comparison. So can they? Absolutely. But are they often paid and contracted to do so? I think it's 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
It goes back to the old adage, you get what you pay for. Um, and if you set the scope of work, which most new homeowners, or well, not necessarily a new homeowner, but most clients who show up and they're looking to have something done, they don't truly understand the project the way you or I would because
Mhm.
they don't have that experience. And so they don't truly know what they're asking for. And I think this is one of those situations where if you have a builder on board with an architect early on, you solve a lot of those problems, Peter, because a builder who's interested in doing good work is going to ask the architect. And once an architect realizes that a builder is on board to do good work, they're going to push the details. They're going to have those discussions. And, we're getting off the topic of mock-ups, but it goes back to early onboarding of a team, Peter.
But it does go back to intent, right? The intent of a mock-up is to provide clarity. And especially in the case where you've been given a set of permit drawings that do not clearly articulate where the window sits in the opening, Are there exterior jam returns? Does that cladding get mitered and sent back? What do I have to do to the WB to make that happen? How does that hit my sill? So we think about, yeah, nerd talk, right? Water management, air control, water shedding surface. But at the same time, we're still putting together a finished building. And I think it's on us as a builder, if you haven't been getting the clarity in the drawing, we need to recognize, right? These drawings don't have that clarity. I need to build in time to my estimate and charge for the time to have those conversations and get that clarity. And a mock-up is one way to do that.
It's also a really good way to sort of validate material compatibility. If you're mixing and matching different systems and whether it's tapes or sealants and things like that, gives you an opportunity to make sure that your strategy is actually going to play out kind of the way you want to, with a variety of different pieces. Because it's quite common for us at least that we are not necessarily using one brand of a material product all the way through the assembly. We're using the best component for that particular part of the assembly, and they have to merge and they have to integrate effectively. And that's one way to sort of find that out and make sure that you feel comfortable with what you're putting together and that it's actually going to work.
100%.
In addition to that, it's a sequence thing too. I mean, in your mind, when you look at this in two dimensions, you believe that, this is the order of operations. This is how I'm going to attack this detail. But when you get into the mock-up, sometimes you find out that 1, 2, 3, 4 is not actually 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't work that way in the field, and you've got to go 1, 2, 4, then come back to 3. So that's another huge win for mock-ups, in my opinion.
Well, I agree. I think actually the sequence is maybe the most important aspect of all of that. Like when you're doing it in real time and actually building the building, if you go out a sequence on materials that are, a little bit more expensive maybe than what you're picking up off the shelf from your lumber yard, you really want to make sure that you're nailing that the first time. Like it's no fun peeling any of this stuff apart, any of this stuff apart, or having to redo things on material that, is $75 for a roll of tape or something like that. So being able to make sure that that sequence is done in a practice setting is really valuable. And I mean, for me, it's a lot of times kind of just off the clock. Well, it's always sort of off the clock and on spare time, which also really frees up like the pressure. Like there's no pressure to do something quickly, and I have I create the time to run through a whole series, and nobody's looking over my shoulder and saying you got 1 hour to develop a mock-up or something like that. It ends up being something I can kind of play with for as long as I need to.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. I think you look at the idea of like, look at those people hours.
Mhm.
If one person looks at you for 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes.
Yeah.
If five people look at you for 10 minutes, it's an hour. And you think about billable hours, yeah, you spending that time at your desk and working it through, they look at you like you're just the boss, right? You're organized, you understand it, and they look at you and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it allows you
Just
to come prepared.
doesn't provide a lot of confidence. And back to Peter's thing is, yes, the architect designer designed the building. Have they ever, though, flashed in any window before? Maybe not, right? But then maybe the first person to tell you, I never done this before, right? So building that clarity is really important. Can I want to introduce that video that you built? Can you give us a sense, just an intro of what that was and why you made it before I play a couple minutes of it?
Yeah, for sure. So that was a recent project we've done, completed, and we've actually used that particular wall assembly and a lot of those details a couple times. And it kind of came, well, it was originally a double wall design that Passive Design Solutions had done for us on a project. And their traditional double wall that they used was a little different than uh, a lot of double walls. They tend to use like a foam, like continuous foam insulation on the in between the two walls. And we kind of looked at that and thought that there just looked like some complicated sequences in there that just didn't seem as smooth to us as it could be. So we really wanted to protect our interior vapor control membrane. So we knew that we wanted a service cavity that was going to be insulated. And we wanted to be able to do it in a way that really didn't interrupt our sort of framing schedule and take anybody out of their comfort zone, even though it was our in-house team doing the work and we were all kind of familiar with it. We wanted it to feel as close to traditional framing as possible so that we weren't having to relearn a whole lot. So this particular assembly was a 2x8 exterior wall with a 2x4 secondary wall as the service cavity inboard of our vapor control layer. So I mean, it's actually a really simple wall to do. There's really nothing unusual about it. It's basically framing your traditional exterior wall, and then like you'd frame up a basement. So for us, it was really simple, and there was a couple little sort of details between the foundation and wall interface that we wanted to iron out. We didn't really like the idea of some of the somewhat complicated methods of getting a membrane like Stego or something to connect with a membrane either on the interior or the exterior. So um, it was kind of a bit of an experiment there on how we made those connections, but it worked really well, and it was airtight, and it's easy to do.
Killer. That's great. Yeah, for the group's benefit, we'll show you 2 minutes of it. And I mean, like our colleague just said, if you've ever seen Stego on a drawing and maybe Stego 15, you're like, ah, super cool. I always want to use this stuff. It's really hard to fold in the corners and get it to. So that takes time. And actually doing it at a small scale helps you understand it. So I'm totally with you. So let me play that. All right, I'm gonna ask you the question again. If you could see it, if you give me a thumbs up, sharing as yeah. Okay, fantastic. All right, I'm gonna unplug my mic. Can you give me a thumbs up again, Aaron, if you can hear the sound?
Nothing's happened. Oh, there we go.
Whether that's to the outside or to the inside. So we need to make sure that we are maximizing the drying potential of our wall. And the thing we need to start with first is our bulk water management. The zip system works really well for that. It's a fully integrated system. It has, a series of tapes and liquid flashes that work with the WRB material to help provide us with a really robust bulk water management system, in addition to an extremely airtight skin on the outside of our building. When we're detailing all of these, our window openings, we're making sure that we're doing a sill pan. That's a really important element. It's also important that we're adding head flashing above our window and properly sealing our windows as they're installed. It also means we're adding proper base flash to kick that water out should it ever get behind the siding. That means we're adding a rain screen so that we decouple our siding from the wall so that it not only helps our siding to last longer by promoting drying from the backside, it also allows our wall to dry into this cavity and have any moisture that does need to dry to the outside, escape freely through our vented channel. So it's
We could listen to that for hours. It's, well, not hours, for 35 minutes and
It
25
does
seconds.
go for a while.
It's wonderful. I think it's the idea of, so if you haven't seen it, go to Jeremiah's Instagram account is Summer Brothers Construction. There's a link there to his YouTube channel. You can see the full assembly, right from foundation all the way up to roof. And you do a great job of breaking down the sequence, the details, but again, communicating what the purpose of those materials are as you talk about it, right? Trying to build common understanding. And now, before we move on to Finlay, if that looks quite large, right? Is that still in your shop?
No, unfortunately, it was starting to interfere with a whole bunch of trim that needed to be painted, so it had to go,
Yeah.
and the parts will get recycled for the next one.
So if you had to do that again, let's say you said, okay, that's cool, but that's like crazy how big that is. Could you have communicated or got some of that same learning by kind of using the same one-to-one materials, but scaling down what you had built?
Well, I think if I was doing something like that again, I may not. I mean, and I really wanted to talk all the way through from foundation to roof. For me, that was
Mhm.
kind of an important exercise to be able to take all three of those sort of components and connect everything.
Yeah,
Um, I think, for a future large scale one like that, you may be a little bit more focused on, say, the vented cathedral is the next one that I kind of want to do because I don't really see a whole lot of what I feel are accurate enough examples of what that can look like. Because oftentimes on an existing project, it's kind of high up. It's a little hard for people to shoot video of that. And if you crawl up in the trusses, I've tried quite a few times. It's a little you almost get too close. So
yeah,
I'd maybe break it up into different sort of components. But I don't know, something that is even when you get to 4 or 5 feet either long and a few feet high, it just I don't know. For me, it feels as close to real as possible, and that helps a lot.
that's awesome. Yeah, so for those of you who want to see the full video, go to Summer Brothers and click on the YouTube link. It feels you right there. So awesome stuff. Really, really, really great. We're going to flip over to another way of sharing. And again, past a full-scale mock-up, maybe it's something smaller. And maybe you're learning about, how do you make that shareable, right? How do you make sure whatever you build, you can communicate it? Let me flip screens here. Okay, there we go. So the next letter in Mamba is we're going to call it build media. So that might be videos, it can be reels, it can be sequence images that you've taken, right? You've taken time when you're doing something to kind of break down step one, step two, step three to share with someone. IG is a great platform for that. Maybe have internal, um, cloud stuff, cloud storage for you, but we're going to introduce Finlay. Finlay, why don't you introduce yourself again to the group and then maybe how you use mockups, to have you use mockups for learning, and we'll show the video that you made.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't think I did a really good job earlier of introducing myself, but I'm a graduate of George Brown College. Connor was my teacher, so I was in his program. So that's kind of where my large building science background comes from. Yeah, so this video that he's about to show, I created this mock-up first in a 2D design, then 3D design, and then I fully built it to a smaller scale. And I think this is great building mock-ups because especially like someone new coming into the industry and like just have a lot of experiences just poly and Tyvek and stuff like that and getting exposed to all these materials. When you see a 2D plan set at first and there's all these crazy words on it, it's kind of hard to understand what all these like new membranes and stuff do. So yeah, the next part we designed it in SketchUp, which is like a 3D modeling software, and then creating it in real life 3D is super helpful too because you get to really see how all the sequencing works. You also learn a lot of mistakes because once you do something in real life, you can't really go back, especially with these tapes that are so sticky. So yeah, the mock-up was a great learning experience for me, and definitely in the future gonna definitely try to implement a whole bunch of more mock-ups.
Yes, sticky tape is like glitter, right? Like once you get a little bit in your house, it never goes away. I'm not talking about like sawdust glitter. I'm talking about real glitter that your 10-year-old daughter brings in your house and it's everywhere. That kind. So Finley, I'm gonna share your video and then we'll talk about it as a group here. So we give me a thumbs up if you can hear this, okay? Just
for school, my capstone assignment. Today, I'm going to be talking about second floor to roof transitions in my wall assembly. I have an R35 wall assembly with R14 continuous installation and R22 bat installation. Starting from the exterior, we're starting with our rain screen strapping, followed by our Sega MyVest 200, which is a mechanically fastened WRB, and we flashed and taped the window to Sega's Wiglove guide. We have a floppy bit here for continuous air barrier. And here's that Gutex wood fiberboard continuous installation, followed by our sheathing 2x6 stud wall. And on the interior, we've insulated with Rockwell Comfort Bat, and our interior air vapor control is Sega's Myrex. We've also taped with Sega Rezan along the window for a continuous air barrier. For our roof assembly, we have a raised heel truss system, which we're going to fill with blown-in cellulose, which is going to give us around an R68 value. For the roof, we have chosen to do an over roof. The benefit of this is that's how we get our roof venting. So the over roof works as we have our truss, we staple on our WRB over the truss, followed by strapping, followed by zip sheathing, which acts as our water control. That's everything, and thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, so that was the one I created. The thought behind that was kind of just using materials I've never used before. Like for example, the Gutex, I've never even heard of wood fiber insulation until probably 6 months ago. So that's pretty cool to use. And especially with the over roof, we just like finding different ways to get your vented roof. So I thought that was pretty cool using like a vapor open membrane over your, obviously that wasn't an actual truss. It was a mock-up truss just built. But yeah, that was really cool to me. Just kind of like doing some research and finding different ways to achieve all the building science behind it. Yeah, great experience.
I think it's great because what you're talking about is if you've never cut, make a parallel. Building a deck, client specifies Ipe. Has anyone cut Ipe here before? super, super dense. And right away you're like, oh shoot, I totally underestimated the hours and the blades and the router bits, right? The first time cutting Rockwell 110, first time cutting Gutex, right? You're figuring out on a small scale, and I saw this in the shop, right? How it goes together. That kind of learning makes you a much better communicator to your team. And down to like PPE and what to wear and like, speaking, you've come a long way in the past year talking about what non-just materials are, what their purpose is. That's really important. So your whole team knows what it is they're constructing. So that's awesome. We're going to come back in a second for a group chat. I want to show you the last type of mock-up, and that's the A in Mamba. Let me share a screen again. So I'm going to close my presentation. One second. Okay, am I sharing a screen again or not? Yes?
And you're not sharing it anymore.
Okay, there it is.
And you're back.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Aaron. So the last A, and I think this is one that's kind of dear to my heart. It's kind of when you work with kids, and if you remember working with anyone with building Lego or IKEA, sometimes showing someone a black and white drawing what a wall assembly has, let's call it minimum 6 layers, maybe upwards of 11 layers in some of these double stud walls from cladding to gypsum. And sometimes it's hard to see the sequence. And you as the GC or site leader, carpenter, have to know the building inside and out, know what is first. So here's the case that we'll show you tonight. This is a double stud house, 2-story. It's got a vented roof, pretty simple 2x6 exterior wall with a self-adhered membrane. So on the surface, simple details. The challenge is, and I'm going to highlight this, what Jeremiah talked about today, and so did Aaron around, your desk is more comfortable than the job. When this job was having its sill plates installed, it's -5, fluctuates to +1, starts to rain. Have you learned what happens to your team when it rains? Do they know on that Stego 15 how far to run it past the sill plate to have enough of the floppy bit that you've called for? Do they know what the overlap is that Stego calls for? Do they know which of the 7 tapes we've spec'd on this project to go get from the boxes? Right? Maybe, maybe not. When we're doing some of this stuff from the SIGA guide, SIGA and a lot of manufacturers have a specific sequence for shingling their product, different reveals. Each company is usually different. How do we communicate that really simply to them so we make sure that when you get to the top of the wall, we all here might be really quite on the same page about that exterior WB as air control. When it hits the roof, it stops and needs to flip to the inside, to the underside of the truss. That might not be obvious on truss day. And we have to make sure that before they set those trusses, we have that floppy bit, that strip of membrane, maybe rip of zip, that is that connection. And further to the cold thing is your desk is low. If your team is up in the air in a bucket, they're burning hours, you're renting equipment, learning on site and thinking it through at that time is really expensive. So as much as mock-ups and planning takes time, it's kind of you get a huge return on investment when you do it. And we're going to flip to a tool that we've been using on some of our projects and we've been teaching in the college, which I think is exciting. And it's a sequence build. So we're calling it a field guide. And I want to show it to you. I'm going to flip screens again. This is my second last time. And I'll stop doing this. Okay, I'm sharing a screen now. Again. Fantastic. Okay, so a couple things you're gonna notice here. We built for this is a slab on grade double stud house. First time this builder had ever framed anything like this. And as we know, we don't just apply the control layers later, right? These details happen as we're framing and as we're building. So we thought, okay, the plans are great, but we know the carpenters got gloves on, they got pouches on. Let's make basically a Lego guide for this assembly. Let's format it as a portrait so that when you export it, each slide fits on your phone that you can flip in your pouch and flip step by step. That's the idea. Okay, we're meeting the learner where they are. So we started with basics. Each image has, or slide has, an image of what the project kind of looks like. We've rendered the textures to mimic the materials. We've labeled the step. And at the base, we try to keep the text as short as possible, pertinent to that step. So Stego requires 4-inch for overlaps. So we want at least 4-inch extension past the top of that wall before they cut and trim that. Any additional pieces must be overlapped 6 inches. And then we tell them what tape to use. The next step is we want to cut the bolt holes through at the top of that wall. Now, in this case, that Stego is acting as capillary brake, it's acting as vapor control, it's acting as then air control. So we're listing those details here so that when that sill plate goes down, we want to make sure we have all those kind of holes and gashes kind of taped in those bolt holes. So there's a taping detail, there's photos, and then we tell them when it's really wet, we offered a wet applied product. So working with temperatures, working with the working on site, this kind of worked for us. Sill plates go down, wall is framed, right? Wall is sheathed on the flat. And importantly, because of our sequencing, the essay comes in a 5-foot roll. This is the first time this team had worked with a short roll that didn't just span the entire wall on the flat. They never installed a Diver-B on the flat before, so this was new. But what was really critical at the base of this slide is because of our shingling, when that wall gets stood up, we kind of wanted to pick up the Diver-B like a dress, like lift it like a dress, and fold the Stego up and fold it down. So what was really key was they wanted to leave the lower 30-inch split backer on that membrane. So only pull the top. So they stuck the top, we're shingling at least 4 inches, right? We distilled the guide all the way down to just a couple steps pertinent to this slide. Stand the wall up, lift up the skirt, fold up the Stego, terminate that to the sheathing with Wiglove. We reached out to Sega, which offered us their high-res graphics. We textured all the tapes in SketchUp. And then you flop down the MyVest, and then we terminate that belt and suspenders with a strip of 4-inch 430 gray. It's nice detail, right? On the drawing, though, that's a couple black lines stuck together with like 15 arrows, but it doesn't tell you which one's first. It doesn't. So how do you raise that affordance? How do you simplify that step for that carpenter who is on a pouch, gloves on, -10 outside, the drawings are wrapped up in the truck as it's snowing? How do we help them get there? So we built this all the way through the top of the wall, how the skirts work, right? And once we build some of these tools, they're really effective tools for communication, for sequencing. So that's the last of the Mamba steps, is that sequence build. There are many ways to do that. I don't know if Steve is here tonight, but Steve does an excellent job on his Instagram showing different sequencing, both in drawings, but also in steps, right? How he's got his signature back dam and slope subsail. These are excellent ways of communicating sequence because the drawings only show you the building looks like complete. So that's kind of I'm going to pull up the last graphic for you, and then we'll have a chat and take some questions. Of course, and test baby test, right? Test baby test. Every single, this is not tonight's chat, but test baby test is Mumba, right? So markups. So failing a big build or a one-to-one mock-up, mark up your drawings, show the intent, show the control layers, show the tape sequencing, show just overlaps. Actual materials. Get a window cut on site, get the tapes on site, get the membrane on site. Better than that, build a mock-up, scaled 1-to-1, something that's the real materials, real flashings, real window, sitting in the opening, works really well. And some kind of build media, right? Failing all of that, can you make something in your shop? Jeremiah did an excellent one. Finley did an excellent one. Shoot a short reel, share that with your team members. And the last one, maybe consider for complex projects some kind of sequencing guide. So we call it a field guide, but how do you communicate the assembly steps to make sure that you're all on the same page, right? We're clear, the intent is clear, and the expectations are really set. With that, I'll turn over the floor.
So one of the things that's been kind of a theme here tonight is first time. So whether we've been talking about first time touching a tape, or a first time building something. And it reminded me of a conversation I had with Mike Gurton. And he once said to me that, like, every time we build something, it's an experiment. And it's very true, because when we're doing custom builds or one-offs, and it doesn't matter whether it's Lori designing it, me or Jeremiah building it, or Connor testing it, if it's never been built before, we don't have any metrics to gauge that by. So yes, we have our experience, we have some building science knowledge, and we know in theory what should work. But if you've never put this particular assembly together before, mock-ups are key for that. That's how you learn. And it's a cheap way to learn. I mean, we live in an age where we're very fortunate, where we have things like BS&BEER Canada. We have things like Instagram and YouTube, where we can go look up professionals and get those details. And Steve, if you're still here in the audience and you want to jump in here and share a little knowledge, we'd be more than happy for you to do so. But the resources are there. But if it's your first time, you can't know everything. So something like a mock-up, or getting details, or even just listening to another person's experience, whether they've drawn the building or built the building, it doesn't matter. There's valuable knowledge to be gained.
I'm smiling because uh, even if it's your 100th time, you can't know everything. Like we just can't anymore. Like things are changing so rapidly. Like if you think back to like, I don't know, like the 80s, like what was like how often was like a new product or a new way of building walls like a thing? Like it was, R2000 was sort of revolutionary, and then nothing really came along until maybe Passive House. Um, Now, literally, it changes every day, and you have like all kinds of access to like information, but also you have to filter that for quality. And there's just like all of this stuff out there where everyone's an expert. And, I think we also, all of us need to be careful who we're listening to, and make sure that we're educated about the building science side of things, so that they, new approaches past the sniff test, not to be like fear mongering, but like honestly, like, I think we probably all also have clients who like show up with like a picture from, something that was built halfway around the world and ask you to replicate it. And you just kind of go, okay, well, how do I do that in Canada? And how do we, how was it even put together? And it's just very exciting and very fun. And also like there's a lot of risk in it for us. So I think like every week's a new adventure, I find.
I want to know how.
AI. Oh my God, don't start on AI. There's a lot of nonsense out there for sure.
Anyways, I was just about to say, like, mock-ups are amazing, but I truly want to know how excited Finley is to start his new gig Monday.
Yeah, super excited. I can't wait. It's a big change, so super happy.
Yes, employment, income, and building science stuff, right? It's fantastic, man. It's really, really awesome.
Mhm.
So
Um,
now you know who to hit up for tapes for your mock-ups, right, Connor?
oh, don't worry. People know I'm not humble and asking for help. Yeah, it's how we get there. It's how we get there.
Paying it forward. Yeah.
You got it. I have a kid pick up I gotta leave at 8, so this is wonderful, everyone. This has been a great discussion. I'm gonna just leave pretty shortly, but thanks for a great evening.
I don't know if we've got any more questions that I have
Yeah,
missed in the chat.
I'm scanning through, but if anyone has any questions, maybe they can just unmute and uh, jump on
Yeah,
up.
no, absolutely. They should. But before that happens, Jeremiah, your mock-ups are amazing, by the way. Um, the devotion, the amount of time that goes into that. I understand completely. So, yes, thank you.
Get out of here somehow. And if I don't have a project to do it on, I got to make it up sometimes just for the off chance that something rolls around that it works. Sometimes it's just a way to release the kind of thought pattern that's constantly spinning around.
Yeah. I have a mock-up sitting in Gina's parking space right now, and I've got a Zoom coming up with somebody, and hopefully we can get it handled, and then I can move it, and Gina can have her parking space.
It's a little bittersweet to have to take them apart too. Like when you kind of spend the time putting it all together and go, man, I guess I gotta yank this thing down now, but this makes room for another one.
It's like grown-up science fair, right? You make that volcano, you get it out of your system. You're like, do I have to really destroy my paper mache? Yeah, it's the same feeling.
For
Now,
sure.
Aaron, is this a mock-up or vehicle? Is this a Ford
No,
mock-up?
no, no, no. This is a mock-up where she would typically park in the yard.
Gotcha.
It's only like 4 by 6 by yay.
That's not too big.
Okay,
Uh,
it's lovely seeing you all. I'll see you next.
Thank you.
Thanks, Connor.
Enjoy. Either way, I appreciate your mock-ups and I appreciate the devotion that you're putting into it and the time you're putting in to educate the industry because we need more of it.
Well, and it also helps that there's a really big network of people that are all kind of thinking along these same wavelengths. I mean, certainly can't take credit for everything. Like some things I see that people have done or tried or have explained, and I want to, have an opportunity to play around with myself. So it's great to be able to draw from all kinds of really smart people who are either designing or building things and sort of, try and find ways to integrate that into my you know, workspace.
Absolutely. There's a few people in our audience here tonight that I have borrowed a few little select details from.
Yeah.
Well, if we don't have
Jeremiah,
any, oh, go ahead.
hey, Aaron. I wanted to
Perfect.
say, Jeremiah, the mock-up was great. Of course. And it's nice to hear the presentation around it. The contractor benefit of it that I like is if no one weighs in on your mock-up, they've lost the opportunity to contribute their experience.
Sure.
Right? It brings forth, we all know we're all better with another set of eyes, with another set of ears.
Well, yeah.
And so if someone doesn't bring forth ideas or questions, we had some the other day that was very close to yours, and we kept redoing the sill pan about 14 times. And I got to tell you, after the fifth time, I was like, I'm tired of redoing this. But the person was so befuddled every time. The 14th time was pretty smooth. The last time I sat on the chair and was just sipping water, crazy hot outside, right? And the 15th time the person did it, same person. And they said, oh, that's it, right? That's all I got to do.
Yeah.
So it's that moment of now they finally think it's easy.
Yeah.
15 times is actually a pretty successful run, I would say. But it was like an aha moment for me, learning from your mock up too, and everyone's. When someone gets bored with it and says what's next, that means they got it. And so your mock up creates a substantial amount of headway to get there. And then the repeating of those steps gets the annoyance factor up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's the fact that you can repeat those in a controlled environment, and you're not doing that on a 5 foot window trying to stick a sill pan down. You can practice that on a small piece, and use a lot less material, and you don't maybe have the pressure of somebody right behind you waiting to install something or maybe the homeowners watching you use a material for the first time. That's not a whole lot of fun to do that while, somebody's, not familiar with it themselves. You kind of got to show up like you've maybe used it before sometimes.
The the other benefit of a mock-up, and you made great representation of that, is when you start to pull all these materials off, it gets very difficult, right? Because of the layering and the bond between them. And that's actually, you're only able to say that because you get it. But if you're ever doing a mock-up and it's very easy to separate those materials, they weren't compatible,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
right? And that happens so much too. You pull it together. So I'm so impressed. I would have loved to stand next to you for that mock-up in person. I'm totally jealous not to be there.
Oh yeah,
But thanks for delivering this expert talk tonight.
no problem. Thank you.
Any more questions? Anybody out there have something for Jeremiah or Lori or even our foreign correspondent, Mark Willie, or maybe for Finley?
I had a question for Jeremiah
Sure.
because I know he's out of the way. I mean, you're not close to Toronto, but you are. How do you deal with seeing newer products on the market and saying, oh, I really want to try that. I really want to use that. But then finding out that it's not just locally available at your regular supplier. How do you deal with supply chain constraints when there's materials out there that you really want to use in your building assembly because you know it's going to make your envelope better?
I think actually, that's probably been one of the easiest things for us the last few years, especially kind of during the first parts of COVID when there were some material chain issues and even things dealing with our local lumber yards. We were still able to get products, whether that was from 475 or through Sega. It seemed like that flow just kept on going and it ships right to our door. So it's been actually not difficult at all, really, to acquire material and try it. Actually, we have not had a struggle with that at all, which seems to me a little bit surprising, but it's actually been really smooth.
Yeah, the direct ship that a lot of suppliers offer now is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And they've done a really good job at having local reps who are willing to travel. I mean, our local Sega rep comes out of Quebec,
Yep.
but he's more than willing to come here if we need him to and do on-site training and employee training,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah, I mean it's super. I mean, I think that's really important for those companies to be willing to do that and willing to like. Had reached out. An architect, a local architect, had met with our Sega rep a couple years ago, and contacted me to say that, hey, you should reach out to this guy if you're ever want to use these products. And I did just to chat with him and and learn a little bit more about it. And like a few days later, he showed up at our shop. I thought he was maybe bringing a sample or two just to kind of see, and he ended up spending about 2.5 hours with our whole team and walked right through a almost full sill pan detail with his tapes and hung out for a long time, and it was great. I think that was really valuable. That's not something that we'd ever see from some of the traditional material manufacturers. I mean, if you see a rep, it's really rare, and I think maybe because those products are quite well known in North America. Maybe they just don't need to do the sort of teaching and hands-on kind of because most of us are pretty familiar with a lot of that.
Oh, they probably should though.
Yeah, they don't. Maybe they don't feel they should need to because it's still selling. I don't know.
Yeah. But
We,
that
we
is one thing about higher performance materials that we're using in our building envelopes nowadays is those sales reps are not adverse to getting their hands dirty,
yeah,
getting the sticky on, and they know how to use their products. And that's part of why it's important for their overall sales agendas. If you can't demonstrate on a mock-up or on a building how those products are supposed to be used, then you have no business being in sales in that industry. as far as I'm concerned.
I can,
If a product rep comes to you and is wearing a suit and a tie and, he's walking onto a construction site, forget it. Like if you can't peel the tape off of a high performance membrane,
Yeah.
you're not going to make it.
It also builds a lot of trust, like, and provides a lot of confidence for us when you meet somebody who's as enthusiastic about what their product is, and really the sale isn't even part of the conversation. I don't
No, they're
meeting
not
with
pushy.
Aaron, who is our 475 rep here, or when Hans was our Sega rep here, or Robert from Huber, for example. Not in a single time meeting with any of those people did I ever feel like there was a pitch to sell any of it. And in fact, it is pretty clear the way we use some of the materials that we don't always stick to one brand for everything. And I've been pretty clear when we've met with them that, like, we're not necessarily exclusive to anything. It's going to be project dependent, and some systems, work really well for some types of projects. And that's part of why we make the decision. But when we have met with reps in the past of, a little bit more traditional building products, it just feels like a straight sales pitch. They don't really try and, you know, educate you in any way. It's just more about something you might be able to do a little faster or cheaper or something like
Yeah.
that, as opposed to better.
And most of the reps that we deal with in those companies that you mentioned are completely open about what compatibility they have with other products because they understand that not every product is available in every market.
Yep.
And not everybody is going to be open to using every product that they have for sale.
Yep.
And that's great. It's a collaboration. It's a movement toward building a better building in whatever way, shape, or form that you can.
Okay. Yep, absolutely. For sure.
Well, all right. We're just a little over 10 minutes into overtime. But if we have nothing further, we'll wrap this up till next month. All right. Anyways, thank you very much for joining us
Thank you.
for another episode. Oh, go ahead, Jeremiah.
I was just
Oh,
going to
you're
say
just saying bye.
thanks, and,
Okay. Anyways,
congrats to Finley on 475.
I'll wrap this up again then. Thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of BS&BEER Canada. We hope to see you next month on the third Thursday, and you'll be able to join us again for another great evening and some fun building science conversation. Special thanks to Jeremiah and Finley for this evening, and as always, thank you from the Cold Brew Crew.